Hi everyone, and welcome to this session. We're talking rum today, and we've got Angus here from Salcombe Distilling Company, and we've got the two of their great rums that they make. So hello, Angus.
Hi, David. Nice to see you.
And can you tell us, for those that don't know, that not visited the distillery, a little bit about where the distillery is, when you can visit, what you can see there, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're Salcombe Distilling Company. So we're down in Salcombe, which is in southwest Devon, and we're right located on a street called Island Street in Salcombe, which is the home of the kind of traditional home of boat building in Salcombe. And we're actually one of the only distilleries in the world that you can directly access by boat. So you can bring your boat right up to the rear of our distillery, come up the back steps, and then come and enjoy a fantastic drink in our bar overlooking the water.
Brilliant, marvelous. And so I mean, I do a lot of gin stuff, of course, and I know you primarily from the great gins that you've made and a great range of gins that you make. But you also are doing rum, which is also very exciting. Was that always part of the plan to do rum? I mean, obviously you've got the sea there and everything like that, but
I mean, the kind of the clues in the name. It's it's Salcombe Distilling Company rather than Salcombe Gin Company, and both myself and my business partner Howard and our master distiller Jason, particularly Jason, has got a big interest in rum, and there is history and tradition there of rum, and obviously smuggling in the bygone era, absolutely. But there's also the same kind of inspiration behind some of our gins. All of our gins was something called the Salcombe Fruiters, and these were fruit schooners that in the 19th century, in their heyday, imported up to 80% of citrus fruit and spices into England, mainly into London, Liverpool, Bristol, Hull and Southampton, main ports they served. And from all over the world, massive citrus trade from the Mediterranean. At the time, there's a very strong orange trade in the Azores, but they also carried pineapples from the Caribbean. In these Salcombe Fruiters, these schooners were sailing vessels, and they had kind of grid-like shells to perfectly position the pineapples to enable kind of circulation of air around the pineapples. But obviously, naturally, on their way back, they carried spices and rum. So there's a strong rum connection with Salcombe. And actually, when we were developing the recipes for Salcombe gin and even our botanical rum, we're using fruits and spices from the same places that used to be carried by the Salcombe Fruiters. So we kind of did a lot of research through the cargo manifests and saw exactly what they carried and where they were carrying rum from as well. Obviously, they aren't detailed enough to say which distillery they were carrying rum from, which is a bit of a shame because that would be pretty cool. But there's obviously that kind of strong tradition, and obviously as Salcombe Distilling Company, our interest isn't just gin, but it's distillation as a process, as an art. And our distilling team are always busy creating some fantastic liquids, many of which will probably never see the light of day. My cupboard at home is kind of full of lots of fantastic prototypes and samples, which is always nice. But rum was a particular passion of our master distiller Jason, and also botanicals. So it kind of worked quite well. So we've our rum's made from scratch. So we import the molasses and sugar, ferment, distill for our white strand rum, which is our kind of white but botanically spiced rum. We then take that rum base that we've created and basically redistill it in the same way that you would distill a gin.
Yeah.
So adding our selection of botanicals, they're purposely selected to work with the rum base that we've created, and also just to provide the aromas and flavors. And then our golden rum, we don't spice that. Currently, don't spice that, and then that goes into bourbon casks for aging.
Brilliant. And I mean, I guess for those watching and those that are familiar with kind of the the gin process, and certainly in the UK, generally you're looking at most just gin distillers are buying in the base spirit and they are then redistilling it with the botanicals. But this is the big difference with the rum, right? Is that you are taking it from the raw material, doing the fermentation where you've got to worry about temperatures and what's the yeast strain and all this stuff, and then the distillation. So it's a lot more time consuming, it's a different skill set, really, isn't it? I mean, the principal distillation fermentation versus redistillation is a totally different skill set.
Absolutely, but I mean, we're doing it. Our gin, like a lot of the best gin distilleries, we don't make our own base spirit, and we don't hide behind that. It's not a core part of our story. In fact, when we were developing original recipe for Start Point, we did experiment with a number of different base spirits and also creating our own base spirit, and lots of taste tests, and we pretty much determined that the English wheat spirit that we could get produced a superior end product, in our opinion, to one that we could create. And obviously, as a startup distillery, with a relatively limited budget as well, we didn't have the funds at the time to invest in a very massive tall column still that were required to get the base spirit to the level of purity that we desired. So we wanted something that was neutral, for which we could then, a blank canvas of which we could then impart our flavors on. And I think the results and seeing how popular Start Point is, how our gins are, I think kind of reflect the fact that for everyone, it may be part of some people's story, having their own base spirit. We didn't feel it was for us, but for rum, slightly different matter. Yes, I'm sure we could buy in a molasse base spirit, redistill it in the same way that we are, but using our own base spirit for White Strand, or just put it in a cask. But it seems for this that we wanted to really, we've got the technical know-how. And it's wanting to be able to craft a product and experiment with different sorts of yeasts and fermentation times to see the exact impact on the flavor. Because ultimately for this, you're trying to create, you want a base flavor.
That's it. You're not going for the purity, for sure.
I'm not going for something blank.
So what's the sort of fermentation time? Because I know it does vary different distilleries, but roughly where are you?
And roughly about 14 days.
Okay.
Roughly speaking. It does vary a little bit. It's definitely varying according to the time of year. So we're fermenting in our basically just off our main still room, and the main still room in the height of summer can reach 40 degrees Celsius. Or particularly if the still's running. So it's perfect for cask maturation. Some of these fluctuation variations in temperature. But if I now look at this time of year, then when we haven't got the sun shining in through the windows each day, then it can be we can ease out, make the fermentation slightly longer to really get that depth of aroma and flavor through the fermentation process.
That seems to be the thing that with the time and also with the temperature. So the two rums that we've got here, it's the same base spirit for both, and it's on a pot still. Is that right? That's
60 litre pot still, flame fired, very, very traditional. Everything's done by hand.
So it's quite small batches that you're making it in then, if it's 60 for 60 litres. And I guess for those watching, the difference between like making spirit for making gin and making rum in terms of like the equipment is you can't make the spirit for gin up to the high enough ABV on a pot still like that. You'd need to have this. I think to get it up to 96, you're talking about 20 foot column still or something to get it clean enough. I mean, you can get close, but to really get there, so that gives you a different option, doesn't it? So I guess my question is, you've made this rum. I imagine I've not tasted the rum just on its own before the redistillation, but I imagine you're happy with it because you wouldn't even use it as your base material, would you? I know what you like, so there you go. What was the thinking of putting the botanicals in it as opposed to just releasing it as a unaged spirit but without the botanicals?
I think there were a couple of things really. So, we start, as I said, it's pretty small scale. So we start with a couple of 200-litre fermentation tanks. We've got our molasses, we've got our sugar, we've got our water, and then our yeasts in there. And we are, about 14 days fermentation. When we've got to about 90%, we'll then take of the process. We'll then take a decision whether we're going to, allow it to keep fermenting for that little bit longer. And I know that, one of the rums I think you tasted recently, they're looking at a month kind of fermentation, and obviously the vast majority of that fermentation process happens in that first couple of weeks, and it's about how much you kind of eat that out, and what's the we're not mass producing a product here,
no.
So we can afford to take our time, and really it's always about the taste, and in roughly 200-litre fermentation tank creates enough for 4 liquid. It creates enough for 4 60-litre still runs.
Okay.
Roughly speaking, and off each still run we get roughly 9 litres at 50% ABV. So so we're charging that still at I guess 12% ABV.
Yeah.
Is a resultant. And then from a 60-litre still run we're getting roughly 9 litres. So to get to the point of creating white strand, we've gone from so effectively 200 litres is now producing us 36 litres of 50% ABV rum, essentially. For our golden rum, that's it. And we fill the cask at 50% ABV, job done.
Yep.
For white strand, there's a couple of things there. Obviously, 50% the perfect percentage ABV mixture that would put into a still if we were distilling gin.
Yep.
By the time we've taken our English wheat spirits and water, and we've got a 50% mix. So we'll charge the still straight. We won't add any more water in. It just goes in the 50%, and then we redistill it. And then we're getting roughly on those 60-litre pot stills, you've got about an average strength of about 78% ABV. That comes up when you're charging it at 50% ABV, and that then becomes white strands. So we're producing roughly 90 500 ml bottles per still run. And the thought behind, rather than just producing a white run, is obviously the value is in creating effectively value add. So if I'm creating my white rum and I'm just selling that, and I can only sell it once, so it's obviously more valuable for us to stick it in the cask, and then to be able to sell it at a higher price once it's aged, or effectively value add to it by redistilling that base, adding our selection of botanicals to create this lovely lightly spiced botanical rum. So there's no sugar added to either of these rums. And we really just treat it as I'm sure some would argue it's a molasses-based gin. Well, apart from it hasn't got any juniper in. So it's a spiced vodka using molasses base, in which you can slice and dice it lots of different ways.
Exactly. Okay. And are you able to tell us anything? I'll crack this open because I was going to have a little taste of it. But are you able to tell us any of the botanicals that are in here?
Yeah. We don't keep them particularly secret. It's not like gin. There's not 20, 30 botanicals in there, unlike some gins. But we wanted something that was delicately spiced, so it's not that kind of chewy, overly spiced, which some rums are. So we wanted some. We also want some spice in there, so we're using a long pepper, Indonesian long pepper. That's quite cool. Some coconut, fresh lime.
Yeah.
In there, cloves, cinnamon, and apricots as
Ah,
well.
okay. So the coconut is quite interesting because even like thinking about from a gin botanical point of view, coconut not often
Often
used
used.
at
Yep.
all. So I mean, are you just using the flesh, or are you using the flesh and the milk, or is it what's the sort of
Just freshly grated flesh.
yeah, okay,
Yeah, and we've also tried with some toasted, desiccated
yeah,
coconut as well. Just add that kind of little bit, of hint more sweetness of those kind of some of those toasted
yeah.
spices as well.
Do you find that does it have quite an impact on the mouthfeel? I don't know. Just thinking about it, it makes me think that it might be something that might impact mouthfeel more than flavour. But
It well, you tell me.
yeah,
um, uh, I think it's providing a slight kind of smoothing factor to it for sure. It's always about same with our gins. It's just a balance of flavour, getting some of that freshness from the lime, nice bit of spice, warming spice,
yeah,
cinnamon, cloves. The long pepper gives that kind of bit of a fruity kind of heat
yeah.
to it. But it's lightly botanically spiced
Mm.
rather than kind of in your face.
So would you, without giving like the very fine details, but like in comparison to when you're making the gin, are you using relatively less in terms of a quantity of botanicals than you would with a gin?
Yeah, I would say definitely less.
Yeah. But I guess you're
Also,
using the base spirit as it
it's
needs
got
to
its own flavour.
complement that, right? So
Exactly.
you put too many botanicals in and you won't taste this thing that you spent these 14 days fermenting and then
It, it,
distilling and all this
yeah,
other stuff, right?
exactly. It's about complementing those aromas and flavors that we've
Mm.
created through the fermentation process. And obviously, when you're distilling gin, the bulk of your botanicals by weight and volume is juniper. So we haven't obviously got any juniper in this. So you're using as a botanical load, obviously proportionately less, considerably less, because you haven't got that juniper in there.
Mm. Well, certainly you're getting the spice on the nose. It's not I would definitely say it's not a very it's not a sweet spice or anything. There's no stickiness to it.
Yeah,
There's a very slight kind of gingerbread element, but it's a very dry kind of thing. And then there is like a slight peppery. I get actually when I'm tasting it a little menthol kind of thing going on
yeah,
as well. And there is I guess that's the lime, isn't it? There's a sort of bright sort of citrus thing, but
yeah.
it's definitely there's a subtlety to it. I think. I mean, it's obviously there, but it's not like like with some spiced rums where it is quite sweet and it is, cloves and cinnamon and it's right up in your face. It's quite restrained. I think is probably how I would
Yeah. I
describe it.
mean, for us, it's about balance, and we wanted to still allow the flavor, the base flavor of that rum that we've created a fortnight fermenting,
Yeah,
and for those botanicals to complement it rather than overpower it.
yeah, yeah. And I think that again that comes through on the flavor. The spice is like certainly still there, but again, it's quite delicate. It's the dryness I think is interesting because when you want to mix it or anything you want to do in terms of drinks and that, you can adjust your own
Yeah,
sweetness. So you want more sweetness in it, you can add some sugar syrup or whatever. But if you don't, then you don't need to.
yeah.
So yeah, and it's quite interesting. I think we'll probably see a lot more of these botanical rums like next year. I think we'll probably because your one came out. When did it come out?
So White Strand we released roughly the first batch roughly a year ago.
Yeah. Okay. So like, and I don't think there were many botanical, or if any botanical rums like out at that kind of stage. I mean, you describe it as a botanical rum. I don't want to put words in your mouth
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Yes, it is. It's a botanical rum, rather than say a spice rum, because a lot of spice rums they're adding essences and spices. They're not actually distilling with them.
Yeah.
So to me, this is a botanical rum because we're treating them as botanicals and adding them during the distillation process.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense to me. And you get it's a different flavor, right? Even if you're doing infusion, so put in the flavorings to one side, but just infusion of the botanicals, those flavors that you're going to get from that as opposed to what you'll get from distillation and in many ways you get a bit more control with the distillation because you can control flow rates and
Yeah,
all this kind of thing. So it's quite fascinating. It would be interesting to see where that goes, how people start to like, you know, what is a botanical rum and what isn't a botanical rum. There's all, I mean, that's rum for you, right? There's all, you always get into all these technical things. I guess distillation of the botanicals, or redistillation or rectification, if you want to call it that, that seems to me to be the thing that makes a botanical rum a botanical rum. If the botanicals are not put in a still, then it's something else. Might be perfectly good, but it's something else. It's that process.
Well,
great. Okay, so that's
it's equivalent of a compound gin versus a
exactly, and they have
versus a distilled gin.
Different processes, and of course, with some products, you might do both.
Yep,
because you want different flavor profiles. Okay, so that's the botanical, and we're going to come on to some of the drinks once we've tasted this one.
Yep.
Just going to give this glass a quick little rinse out with this water I've got here. Right, now we are. So this was a great surprise, because when you entered Rum of the Year, because this is why we're talking about it, I was expecting just the botanical rum, and then we get this as well, which was great. So this is your 2020 bourbon cask there for people to have a look there. So this is just come out, is that right?
It hasn't actually been released yet.
Oh,
it's just about to be released. So we did a very small release of this in November last year.
Yeah.
And it sold out in 36 hours.
I can imagine.
So we thought, well, that's fantastic. But obviously, you know, we're producing it, and you know, in this case, we're producing it and we're putting it in a cask, and it's then been aged for for a period of time. So we thought, well, that lot sold out. So as soon as that sold out, we haven't actually put out another release yet. So we've been slowly building up our stocks, maturing it, so we can do a more meaningful release, which will probably be in the early part of the new year.
So people have to wait a little bit. So you get a little sneak preview now, but you'll have to keep checking out. Check the website. Check the social media and stuff, and that we'll put the links in for the video for that, so that you can check out on it. So this is a bourbon cask, isn't it? And what was the first one that you did? Was that ex-bourbon as well?
It's the first.
Your first release.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And
so we use casks from Kings County Distillery.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, great.
And so we've got a really good link with those guys. And they're I mean, we can obviously control the cask that we're sent and the char levels of the cask, but for us they work really well.
And it's I'm kind of guessing here, but I imagine it's a case of that in terms of like duration for maturation, it's about when it's ready, right? It's not about, because I mean, there's the room where you said that where you're aging it is, you know, might be up to 40 degrees in the summer, but in the winter it might be less. So you know, you have something in a barrel for 3 months in the summer, the impact of it's going to be very different to in the winter. So which I think is quite, we do get a bit hung up a little bit about specific time periods, and I'm kind of like, well, when we talk about aging, but I'm more like, well, it's more maturation, because there's like so many other things, temperature and humidity and
absolutely. I mean, it's ever since we've been the still room always smells fantastic anyway, but there's this extra level of smell there with all these casks being matured. And actually I've been doing a few, I'm sure like a lot of people, various Zoom interviews, and normally I'll do them at the distillery, but I've been doing quite a few at night with US journalists recently, and distillery's closed, I'm the only person there, I'm kind of opening up, and I always spend a few minutes at the end of it just pulling the bungs out of various casks and nosing them, because the smells are such
to have a around. So I've just got this in the glass, just enjoying the nose of this at the moment. It's just because sometimes when you have like ex-bourbon, it can be really heavy on the vanilla and all that kind of thing, and this is not. It's a lot more relaxed. I'm getting like some sort of like creme brulee notes, as opposed to like really heavy on the vanilla. A little spice, but it's quite light. There's some, I mean, I guess it's the same rum, right? So there's the base. So there is definitely
same base, but we haven't added any botanicals to this.
But smelling between the two, there does seem to be like some connection, which is quite nice. You can kind of see a house style almost, as it were. And the ABV of this is 42.4, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. So, and I think that's sometimes some rums can be like quite, you know, some if they're like cask proof and stuff, they can be quite sort of aggressive. You kind of have to work out how you're going to deal with that. But this is very just like sippable as it is. There is some sweetness coming through from the rum, but there's a little butteriness. Again, there's that creme brulee kind of thing. There's spice, and then there's a little bit of warmth as well. So it's not too. There's a body to it. I think is probably how I would describe it as well. So,
and we haven't added. There's no added sugar, and there's no caramel colouring. It's all natural.
No mucking about.
No mucking about.
Did you have any thoughts? I mean, when you're tasting it, any particular thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, because it's been such a rarity and a small supply. Although, you know, kind of pull samples and enjoy them. To me, it's, you know, I love a good cognac as well, and it's got some of those kind of similar, you know, qualities. It's got a purity there, a liquid. As you said, you know, getting a little bit of ginger. I couldn't get it. The creme brulee was definitely kind of one of my tasting notes. A little bit of kind of spice, but that's must just be from the cask, or you know, effectively through the fermentation process, on the basis we haven't added anything else. But it is that kind of crispness as well, with a nice warmth, without being cloyingly sweet or overdone. So, you know, using a relatively small cask format, it's very easy to overdo it particularly when you've got such a variation in temperature and humidity in the room. So, you know, your point earlier, it's ready when it's ready. And you know, and I think some of the early experimentations, particularly if the casks were recharred, or it was very quick to effectively overdo it. So now I feel we've got that balance right, and using, you know, some casks that we've refilled as well.
Okay.
So using refilled casks, and then we've got a couple of experiments underway down the road. So some of our various gins that we've been doing, we've been doing quite a lot of cask aging, maturation of the gins. The last one, Phantom, that was aged in Sauternes casks from Chateau Clément. And we've had some Muscatel casks from Newport, Collietta, Tawny Port cask, Newport, Fino sherry casks. So we've got a few experiments, and I think one of the things we're down the road is, you know, some of this rum that's been in bourbon casks is now going into more specialist casks that have got an amazing kind of provenance and story.
So look like as a finish,
another layer of flavour.
Yeah. Well, I know certainly from when we've spoken before, you have very good relationships with a lot of different sources of casks. So I think you've got a lot of potential for experimentation with different things. Do you think the plan will always be to do it in these limited kind of for the aged gin in these limited releases, as opposed to having a constant one that has consistency? It's limited batches. There's different things, different casks, different things to get excited about. A bit like the Voyager series, I guess.
Yeah, we are in the process of scaling up rum production at the moment. We can't actually keep up with demand for the rum, so nice position to be in.
Yeah.
But we want to do it properly. We don't want to take any shortcuts. There's lots of great rums out there. There's also, you know, too many people, in my opinion, that just import, add sugar and spices and sell, or import and blend, or make and just add caramel colouring and taking the shortcuts. And, you know, with everything, we always want to do it properly, even if it takes a bit more time, and create a product. So I think yes, we would love to make the Golden Rum a bigger release and a more consistent release. You know, if we sell out, we sell out, and have to wait till the next lot's ready. But the White Strand, Botanical Spice White Rum, the plan is to make that a constant, just increase the production of that, increase the size of the equipment on which we're producing it on.
Yeah, or yeah, maybe another still, right, or a bigger still, or or both.
It's a tricky balance because, you know, obviously the majority of what we produce is Salcombe gin, and just because we can distill rum and other things doesn't necessarily mean we should. You know, in terms of there's only so much resource
Yeah.
any company has, but it is genuinely exciting, and you know, and the guys have got a you know, a bit of a passion for it, and looking to do more stuff, and particularly with some of the casks and future gin releases, of which I'm then discussing with people about different casks and say, well, let's use that cask for rum and those casks for
This whole,
gin.
yeah, the network of it all, right? Yeah, like,
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
quite well.
yeah,
That's fun though. That's the thing. Like, and you sometimes you see distillers do partner with other distilleries, and I guess in many ways that's what you're doing as well, either distilleries or wineries, where
wineries,
you're
yeah.
getting the casks from. But then also, if you've got your own in-house kind of, then you understand that cask, you understand like how it's been looked after and all those kind of things. You have a bit more of control. But yeah, you can start to feed one thing into another, which can lead to some very interesting results. And I think like I definitely think as the reason why we did Rum of the Year this year, the reason why we're doing these interviews is that I think the public in the UK are ready to like explore rum, explore, you know, British rum that's made properly, you know,
Yep.
doing the full shebang. Oh, there's a place for blending, I think. Like it's a different skill set,
Completely agree.
um,
Completely
but
agree.
there is a place also for doing it, having control over the whole journey from the fermentation all the way through and the maturation and everything.
And there's
So
also
I
scope
think,
to
yeah, people will be
combine.
very excited.
Yeah, and there's also scope to combine. You know, we've done some experiments of blending our rum with some other fantastic rums that we've imported from different places.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Yeah,
And actually all tell the story of the Salcombe fruiters and bringing these together, that have, you know, our rum has a certain aroma and flavor profile, and then blending that with some other amazing rums as well. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities there.
yeah, for sure. Right, well, we'll finish off, as I said, we'd finish off with a drink. So I think for this one, I think there's two recommendations, wasn't there? I mean, there's probably lots of different drinks, great drinks
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
make,
yeah.
but there's the mojito and the dark and stormy. I think I'll go for the dark and stormy because of the those gingerbread notes I was getting. I think
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
intrigued, intrigued by that. So I'm just prepping my lime here as we go. So other than the just whilst I'm prepping this, other than the rum that's coming out next year, anything else that people should keep their eyes out for from Salcombe for
Yeah, so
2021?
we've got a couple more Voyager series gins that we're working on. One which will be a spring release, another fantastic chef collaboration. Obviously remains under wraps for the moment, but we're starting work on that, or we've already started work on that. And then an autumn release, which will definitely involve some of the casks that I was talking about. Then we also have our non-alcoholic spirit, New London Light,
Oh yes, of course.
that we launched in September. That's going really well. So we're working on a couple of additional variants on that, with a different flavour profile, to expand that range, and that's really exciting as well, because it's, you know, it's another different audience. You know, the whole growing no and low sector.
Right, for sure. Huge. Yeah.
And you can do so much with the you know, with the flavors of those as well, without feeling like you're missing out. I think
Yeah.
it's the key thing to me. I was a little bit skeptical, definitely at first. I don't think the bar had been set very high in the sector.
I think you're right, and I think that this year it's definitely improved
Yeah,
significantly. I mean, obviously all the things going on this year, but you are starting to taste and see some products and be like, actually, yeah, this is good quality. You're starting to find some way, like, I mean, one I tried and I gave it to a friend of mine, and they're like, I wouldn't know if I was drinking gin and tonic or
yeah.
this non-alcoholic thing and tonic. You're like, well, that's kind of where you are, and also, you know, the garnishes and all that. The presentation needs to be there. I think is the thing that's always been missed.
It's the ritual. You know, you want it to be, whether it be gin and tonic, vodka and tonic, or any other kind of spirit with mixer. It's about that moment in time, that period, and that ritual. And if you can have something that completely slots into that ritual, and you don't feel like you're missing out, then it's a winner.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing that I think everyone still struggles with, myself included, is, and this is the same across non-alcoholic beer versus alcoholic beer, is you want to have the non-alcoholic version first. Because going back the other way after you've had your gin and tonic or your pint, going to the non-alcoholic one it's just not going to be the same.
Not the same, no. That is true. Well, I've made the dark and stormy here with that, so let's have a little taste of this. Yeah, and I think so. It's quite interesting because often when I have the dark and stormy, I'd have a very heavy. Right, I mean, of course, like sort of, there's that great connection with Goslings, and that's works very well with that. And this is kind of like a different kind of approach to it. It's lighter,
more light and stormy.
Yeah, light and stormy. Yes, exactly. And so it's just, I mean, I've got ginger beer and lime, and I've squeezed a bit of the lime in here. And but it's a little bit lighter. It's in the same family, but it's not the same. And I think, like I was saying, as I expected, some of those spice comes through, but you're also getting some of the fruit, and so the fruit kind of lifts it up, so it's not it's three-dimensional as opposed to two-dimensional, because sometimes anything with ginger beer, if it's spicy, like it's just spice upon spice upon spice, and I think this has got that fruitier lift. So, well, thank you very much for your time, Angus. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll say cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much.